Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. I'm honestly so thrilled you're here today because we're tackling something that, let's face it, keeps so many entrepreneurs tossing and turning at night. How do you actually properly protect your brilliant business ideas? Now, if you're operating here in South Africa, you might think, hey, a quick Google search, download a random confidentiality template, and I'm good to go for my next pitch, right? Well, not quite. As we'll explore today, the local legal landscape requires a very, very specific approach. So let's get right into it. Let me tell you a quick cautionary tale about someone named Sarah. Sarah had this absolutely brilliant idea. I mean, a true gap in the market. It started innocently enough, right? Month one, she's just having a few casual coffee meetings with a potential partner. Fast forward to month two, and she's firing off detailed voice notes outlining the whole shebang, her full concept, her pricing model, the entire rollout plan. Then, month four hits, and the unthinkable happens. She watches her exact product get launched by a competitor. Look, Sarah trusted her network, which is great, but she shared her entire playbook without a single shred of formal protection, and she absolutely lived to regret it. Section 1. When ideas get stolen, the true cost of an unprotected pitch. Okay, let's dive into this. Could a simple NDA actually have saved Sarah? When ideas get stolen, we always hear the exact same, slightly desperate question. Should I have used an NDA? The short answer? Yes, absolutely. But, and this is a big but, a generic template wouldn't necessarily have saved Sarah anyway. To understand the true cost of an unprotected pitch, we kind of have to look at what an NDA is actually designed to do. An NDA, or non-disclosure agreement, gets a bad rap. People misunderstand it. It is not about being secretive, and it doesn't mean you inherently distrust the person sitting across the table from you. Honestly, it's just a contract. It establishes clear, enforceable rules before any sensitive info changes hands. It just plainly states, hey, this is confidential, here is exactly what you are allowed to do with it, and here are the specific consequences if you misuse it. And this brings us to a hard truth that you really need to internalize right now. Handshakes, they don't hold up in court. Verbal promises, gentlemen's agreements, or some vague understood sense of confidentiality, they offer you absolutely zero legal protection when things go sideways. I mean it. If someone decides to take your idea and run with it, and all you have is a firm handshake to point to, you have literally nothing enforceable to fall back on. Section 2, the generic template trap. Why free online templates can ruin your deal. So, knowing you need it in writing, you might be tempted to just jump online and download the very first free form you find, right? Well, actually scratch that. Using a free random NDA from the internet can backfire spectacularly. It can make a really promising business meeting incredibly awkward, or worse, leave you totally exposed when it counts the most. And this brilliantly illustrates the difference. See, most free downloads are one-sided or unilateral NDAs. They aggressively protect only your information. If you slide that across the table to a potential collaborator, their first thought is, wait a minute, what about my ideas? It creates instant suspicion. On the flip side, a mutual NDA protects both parties' information. It shifts the entire dynamic from "I don't trust you" to a fair professional partnership. Now, what's really interesting about this breakdown is you don't always need a mutual agreement. It really depends on the situation. If you're pitching to an investor or, say, hiring a contractor who isn't bringing any confidential IP of their own to the table, a one-sided NDA makes perfect sense. But if you're exploring a joint partnership or entering into a merger where both sides are going to completely open their books to each other, a mutual NDA is really the only professional choice. Section 3. The South African difference. Local laws require local NDAs. Now we are hitting the absolute core of this explainer. Listen, even if you choose the right type of NDA, if you just downloaded some generic template from the UK or the US, it is not going to hold up here. South African contract law has very specific enforceability requirements that those overseas templates completely 100% ignore. So let me ask you a question. What on earth does POPIA, the Protection of Personal Information Act, have to do with your seemingly simple business pitch? You might think, hey, I'm just sharing a business model, but the second you hand over a slide deck that contains client records, an employee list, or even supplier contact details, boom, you have just crossed into highly regulated territory. The reality is, if personal data changes hands, both parties instantly take on POPIA obligations. And guess what? An overseas template won't mention a single word about this. A compliant South African NDA absolutely must explicitly address purpose limitation, meaning they can only use the data for the purpose of the pitch, nothing else. It has to mandate strict security measures, it needs to outline exactly who gets notified in a data breach, and it must legally require the secure deletion of all that personal data the minute your talks conclude. And if they do breach your trust, you need the right legal weapon. Here in South Africa, that weapon is an urgent interdict. Basically, it's a powerful court order that acts like a giant stop sign, stopping a competitor in their tracks immediately. But here is the catch. South African courts have really specific standards for granting these. You have to prove what's called a prima facie right, an irreparable harm. If your NDA is vaguely written, or worse, based on foreign law, yeah, good luck getting a local judge to grant that interdict in time to actually save your business. Section 4. Building a bulletproof NDA. The anatomy of a perfect local contract. Let's move to and see how this builds into an actionable plan.
All right, so we know the risks, we know the local legal quirks. How do we actually construct a valid, enforceable South African NDA? Well, it's like a giant puzzle, and you need 4 crucial pieces. Step 1, and honestly, this is the most common point of failure. You must clearly and specifically define what confidential information actually means for your specific business. Don't be vague. Step 2, narrowly specify exactly what the recipient is allowed to use it for. Step 3, explicitly outline the consequences of a breach, including damages and that urgent interdict we just talked about. And finally, Step 4, you have to explicitly state that the agreement is governed by South African law and jurisdiction. Non-negotiable.
2 to 5 years. Why is this number important? Because that represents the realistic amount of time an NDA is actually enforceable in South Africa. So many generic templates demand perpetual confidentiality, meaning forever and ever. Let me tell you, South African courts rarely uphold forever for routine business information. Keeping the duration reasonable, typically right in that sweet spot between 2 and 5 years, makes your contract infinitely more likely to actually be enforced by a judge. Section 5. Common mistakes to avoid. Don't let your ideas slip through the cracks. Okay, before you walk into your next big meeting, let's run through a rapid-fire checklist so your ideas don't slip through the cracks. The absolute biggest mistake? Still not using an NDA at all. Next is relying on that generic overseas template we've been warning you about. Third, vague definitions. If you're vague, the other party can just argue, hey, I didn't know that specific thing was a secret. Fourth is forgetting to restrict their third-party employees or contractors from seeing your data. And finally, ignoring post-termination obligations. Just because your business relationship ends doesn't mean confidentiality should. I want to leave you with a really powerful quote from our source material. Protect your business before trust is tested. I love that. An NDA is not a weapon, guys. It's a shield. A properly drafted, localized NDA is the absolute foundation of professional respect. It shows potential partners that you take your business seriously, and honestly, it just gives you the ultimate peace of mind to share your vision fully. So, I have to ask, are you ready for your next pitch? Take a really hard look at the documents you're using right now. Are they truly tailored for South African law, or are you accidentally leaving your very best ideas exposed? It's time to secure your intellectual property the right way. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and here's to making absolutely sure your next big idea stays yours.